Hey, what do you like to do besides be on your phone? What are your hobbies? What do you like to do in your free time? Find something that you enjoy doing that isn't on this device, okay? We need to put this thing down more.
I have so many thoughts on why I think the explosion of hobbies online is such an interesting topic. So stay with me while we discuss. Hobbies went from something not really discussed in the popular online media. Maybe it was more subcultures or like niche little pockets of the internet full of people really dedicated to the craft, to becoming the thing talked about on TikTok. Before this hobbycore explosion on TikTok, it was perfectly acceptable to say that your main pastimes were scrolling your phone and consuming media online. Now suddenly that makes you a boring person, and people want to know what your interests are outside of your phone. From someone who finds themselves very, very influenced by this discourse and has started wondering if I'm a boring person that only really likes to consume media, because books and reading kind of count as media too, I'm absolutely fascinated by the way that TikTok is taking this new interest in hobbies and turning it into something that can be commodified or used as a status symbol that can be sold back to each other online. I fear that just as bag charms started as a trend that could show your personality and quickly became a massive trend that everyone was buying mass-produced items for to show a curated personality online, hobbies have almost become bag charms that you can collect to add on to your personality that you're selling to other people on TikTok. Obviously, this is a very negative way to look at the hobbycore discourse and might seem like a reach to people who are genuinely interested in hobbies and don't really care about what it says about them. So you're going to have to let me explain and break down my thoughts as to why I feel like having a hobby is the latest trend that we're selling to each other online. So let's get into it. Before we do, welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. I talk about sustainable fashion, industry news, and online discourse, particularly relating to fashion and TikTok. If that sounds good to you, then subscribe to me here on my channel, follow me on my socials, and let's get into the video. Okay, you might be wondering why I'm talking about this. On the surface, hobbycore does not seem like it intersects very well with fashion, which is the topic I talk about most on this channel. But I'm here to convince you that hobbycore has closer ties to fashion than you might think. If you follow me on Substack, you might have already seen that I've kind of covered this topic on there and talked about in my latest post how I've kind of moved away from caring about fashion trends very recently and am kind of instead consumed with the discourse happening online towards building communities and spending time offline and having a hobby, which is probably me just being swept up by the algorithm, as this seems to be what is trending on TikTok for everyone too. And on the surface, I think this trend sounds amazing. I am completely here for more people switching off their phones, talking to people more, and spending time doing things that they love. But because this is TikTok and because I have a fascination with analyzing trends online and trying to find their deeper meaning, I'm always a little bit wary that a TikTok trend is less wholesome than it sounds. I've been asking myself the question, am I consumed with the idea of having new hobbies because I actually want to spend time doing things that isn't doom scrolling? Or am I obsessed with it because TikTok has decided that extracurriculars are the new currency that we can sell each other? You might still be asking, okay, but what does this have to do with fashion? Why are you talking about it? And I'm going to need you to walk with me here. To me, this discourse always seems to have the underlying message of do this so you can have better personal style. And I feel like we need to walk back through the online discourse that's happened in recent months in order to understand that pipeline. TikTok is known for creating and fostering fashion trends that then get picked up by the wider industry and impact what we see on the runways, what we see in high streets, and what we see in street style. Because of this influence, trend culture sped up to the point that it was hard to keep up with what was trending at any given moment. Made all the worse by micro trend culture, which basically got it to the point where nothing was really on trend because everything is on trend. From this relentless kind of chase of the latest thing or the latest core that TikTok is telling you is cool, I think has birthed a trend fatigue, and Vogue also believes this is true. And I think that was a direct correlation to the increased talk around personal style and how to be individualistic in your fashion choices, because people were fatigued with all these trends that made us look exactly the same. However, with this personal style discourse came the discourse that personal style is hard, considering the fact that so many of us have just bought into the latest trends for years now, made that our personality for a little bit, and then moved on with the next one. We're not really used to actually putting much thought into our fashion choices and what they say about us and how to get dressed in a way that suits us. So a lot of people became frustrated with the fact that you can't just buy personal style. It comes from hard work and knowing yourself. These thoughts around why personal style was hard kind of then sparked this side discourse around personal style is hard because you're not interesting, because you don't do anything outside of your phone. So what are you drawing inspiration from? You need to go outside, you need to get a hobby, you need to become interested with life again. And then naturally from that comes the obsession with hobbies. And this pipeline is very, very clear to me. Maybe it sounds crazy to you, but I can 100% see how each of these trends has sparked the other one until we've reached this point here where hobbies are the new fashion trend, the new thing to flaunt online and like show that you're cooler than everyone else or that you know yourself better. But still with this underlying feeling that we're doing all of this so that we can dress better and find our personal style, so that we can still be on track with the macro trend right now, which is individualism in fashion. And okay, sure, maybe this isn't always the case. Maybe the people who aren't obsessed with fashion, who don't have the same TikTok algorithm as me, so maybe haven't been swept into this pipeline and instead are just finding it cool that people are now talking about hobbies online, is what's happening for part of the population. But I don't think it's a coincidence that TikTok is having two simultaneous conversations around being offline, building your community, having a hobby that gets you off your phone, and personal style is the new fashion trend. You need to be more individualistic and you need to use your clothes as more of an expression of yourself than something you're just buying from influencers to feed the fashion machine. If you're still with me after that, then thank you so much. I know that that was a lot. And maybe some of you are thinking, okay, but this is a really jaded way to look at the hobbycore trend, and I agree. And even if it isn't, it is in a way healthier to have discourse that centers around hobbies, even if it's just being pushed for social currency rather than fashion trends that pollute the planet. I think in order to figure out whether this is good or not, we need to break down the way hobbies are being talked about online and the language people are using to talk about their hobbies to others on TikTok especially. Like I said, I've been obsessed with hobbycore discourse. I've been watching a lot of TikToks that show other people's hobbies, and I've kind of noticed some trends going on, specifically in the language and the way people are presenting their hobbies to others. It left me questioning, are people engaging in these hobbies deeply or only at surface level? Obviously, to some people who are actually dedicated to their craft and find a joy in it outside of TikTok, I don't think this applies. But for others, it seems to be more focused on what doing this hobby says about you and says to other people and how this can give you social currency on TikTok. I'm literally questioning myself whether my sudden drive to pick up my old art supplies and start learning French again are because I want something to do for me, or because I want to be able to say to people in conversation, yeah, I'm learning French again. And I think part of the reason for this is that all of the TikToks I've been consuming have been framed in a certain narrative of, like, for example, it's really chic to say you paint or that you're a painter. And is that the only reason that some people have now picked up painting, to revel in the image that it creates for others? On TikTok, so many of the popular videos are talking about this trend through the lens of like cool girl hobbies or it girl niche hobbies. And again, it's kind of signifying that, at least online, these discussions are kind of just regurgitations of trend culture or buying into an online persona of like a cool girl, but through what you're doing rather than what you're wearing. And just relating it back to fashion even more, I had the idea that maybe because micro trends themselves have become so meaningless. I mean, what does eclectic grandpa even mean when you think about it? We're now embracing hobbies because they give us permission to lean into a subculture in a way that just seeing a trend being talked about online doesn't really, and kind of gives us permission to buy into a new style because it relates to what we do. Basically, what I'm thinking is that instead of micro trends influencing our clothes and our behavior, it's now our behavior that's influencing our clothes, which is kind of the way it was before TikTok came along anyway. But I fear I'm rambling at this point and it doesn't make any sense. So let's just go into an analysis of the wider context around this hobbycore trend, because I feel feel like it's really important and actually breaks it down to the point where you can understand it a bit more. Okay, like I've mentioned in this video, in previous videos, the lack of community and wanting to build a new one is something that a lot of us have been thinking about recently. And I'm wondering if that's part of the reason why so many of us are now searching for hobbies as a way to make this a social activity that can connect to others. At the same time though, I fear that the social media culture of commodifying yourself as one thing in order to make your personal brand more recognizable is playing a role here into how much people are leaning into hobbies. What I mean by that is that TikTok encourages us to go all in on something so that we can become well known for that. Think Tube Girl. Obviously she has a life outside of riding the tube, but that is now her brand and what she's known for, at least in the fashion space. And I feel like people are taking this well-known social media tactic and applying it to the hobby discourse going around right now. For example, I found one girl's TikTok that was explaining how she's been trying loads of new hobbies lately to see what she likes. And when I clicked in her bio, she'd actually mentioned this in at the top of her page. So people coming from these videos would know that this was a series that she was planning to lean into. And if they were interested in hobbies, she would be a great person to follow. And yeah, it just kind of links back to my original thoughts about hobbies being the new commodity that we can sell to each other. It's also not lost on me at all that this wider discourse around our need to get off social media is largely happening on social media. And consuming this kind of content that says, yeah, we should not be on our phones whilst sitting there on your phone kind of feels to me like a false step towards progress. Like for me, consuming these videos of other people telling me about their hobbies and like how they've used them to get off social media makes me feel really positive. It makes me feel like I could do the same thing and that then I would also be free of doom scrolling. And that emotion is almost enough. And it's almost like enough that I don't feel that I need to actually take the step to get off my phone and to pick up a hobby, because I've kind of got that dopamine hit I was craving just by doing nothing but watch someone else be offline. Hobbycore has also fallen into the classic trap of therapy speak online, where people are breaking down the idea that hobbies equals honoring time with yourself and building your self-esteem. And it makes me feel that hobbies have become popular in part because we're searching for meaning in a culture that has become so meaningless that literally anything can be turned into a trend or a talking point online. And although there's 1,000 examples, the one that came to mind was the impact demure had. Like, what was that trend? On an economic level, I think we have to pay attention to the fact that leisure has been called the new wealth indicator. And it's kind of sparked this new dialogue that having hobbies is a sign of wealth and free time, and the fact that you can take time off working an extra job in this cost of living crisis. And I think also if we apply the theory that everything in fashion is political, we could also kind of make the link that the state of the world itself has gotten us as a society to the point of mental breakdown that hobbies have become a way to escape. It's almost like a rebellion against like the news cycle and social media trying to take up so much of our time that we're like, you know what, I'm going to put my phone down. You're not going to have my attention. I'm going to do something that actually makes me feel good because I can't deal with it anymore. Okay, and this might be quite niche, but for the explosion of crafty hobbies like knitting and sewing and crocheting, could it be explained as a rebellion against the cost of fashion going up and the quality of things going down, that we're now like, you know what, I'll do it myself. I will create something that I know is good quality and I can control the materials of. And again, quite niche, but I've definitely seen people using this as a reason to pick up sewing online recently. Without getting too much into it because this video is getting long, I think there's definitely something in the fact that picking up a new hobby allows us to buy something. And in our consumeristic culture, that is so exciting. Even if it clashes with our attention spans not allowing us to pick up a hobby for long, and the fact that all that stuff we bought for the hobby then just becomes clutter in our houses. I think it still kind of works with my point about this being the new fashion trend, but instead of people buying into clothing, they're buying into paint supplies and exercise clothes that work with their new aerialist class. And finally, I want to just end talking about a Substack post that I recently really enjoyed and was just constantly playing in my head when I was researching and scripting this video. The post was called Ultra Processed People by Beth Bentley, and I highly highly recommend you go read the whole thing, but I just want to read out one of the quotes from the article. Like modern industrial agricultural monocultures, we're getting cultural monocultures. Everything looks the same. Everything is derivative of something else. Everyone is in a filter bubble, and we are getting less interesting, less stylish, less individuated under the algorithm. Just like ultra processed foods have made us forget what real ingredients taste like, maybe ultra processed culture is making us forget what real creativity feels like. And this might even be true even when it comes to actual creativity in our hobbies. Hearing what Beth says there makes me think that is watching these highly aesthetic TikToks selling us cool girl hobbies, prompting us to see these extracurricular activities that are supposed to bring us nourishment and joy, instead only in the way of what they say about us and how they can be sold to others online. And that's the thought I want to leave you with, especially if, like me, you are now getting so interested in the idea of picking up 10,000 new hobbies. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for sticking with me through it. It was a bit hard for me to tie together all of these random thoughts and half-baked concepts in my mind and make it into one video. So I hope it wasn't too long-winded, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything I've mentioned, so do comment below. And yeah, have a lovely, lovely day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.